Captain Zaroktal slowly lowered the contract tablet onto the table, his three eyes narrowing as he studied the group of mercenaries before him. 4 Krogi, large reptilians with spiked scales, grinned smugly, displaying rows of sharp teeth. "Repeat that again," Zaroktal said in a quiet voice that carried an edge of steel. "Where exactly do you want me to take you?" The mercenary leader, a scar across his left eye speaking of many battles, waved a clawed hand dismissively. "To human settlement HD 347, small colony edge of their space. Intel shows rich deposits of rare minerals but laughable defenses. Handful of soldiers, rest are civilians. Lots of younglings, elderly," he grinned wider. "With their primitive firearms it'll be quick work. An hour, 2 at most, and we're gone with the cargo." The other Krogi hissed in pleasure, anticipating easy prey. Zaroktal leaned back in his chair, his chitinous shell clicking softly. For several long seconds he studied the mercenaries in silence. Then he slowly shook his head. "No." "What?" The leader frowned. "We're paying double rate for urgency." "You could offer 10 times that," the captain interrupted. "The answer remains the same. I will not take you to a human settlement, ever." The mercenaries exchanged puzzled glances. "Old bug," one of them growled, "are you really afraid of those naked primates with their gunpowder and lead? We are Krogi. Our scales can withstand their pathetic bullets." Zaroktal rose from his seat. Despite his advanced age, he still towered over the Krogi. His 3 eyes regarded them with something that might have been pity. "You are fools," he said simply. "Young, arrogant fools who see only numbers in intelligence reports. Children, elderly, primitive weapons." He shook his head. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Enlighten us then, Ancient One," the leader hissed mockingly. The captain walked to the viewport, staring into the bottomless darkness of space. When he spoke again, his voice was distant, lost in memory. "It was 43 cycles ago. I was young, hot-blooded, full of ambition. I served in the Sharp Blade Mercenary Corps, an elite unit considered one of the best in the sector. We took contract after contract. Our reputation was impeccable." He fell silent, his mandibles moving slowly, a sign of deep agitation in his species. Then came an assignment on the planet New Prague. Human colony, 120,000 settlers. We were to capture the orbital station and force the colonists to capitulate. Standard operation to coerce a favorable contract with the corporate employer. Intel showed almost no regular troops in the system. 1 garrison platoon, about 30 soldiers. The rest were civilians. Zaroktal turned to the mercenaries. "We thought just like you, that it would be easy." One of the Krogi snorted, but fell silent under the captain's gaze. "We took the orbital station without problems. 3 human guards didn't even manage to raise the alarm. Then we landed on the surface, 200 elite fighters against a handful of soldiers and a crowd of farmers." His voice hardened. "By the end of the first day, we had lost 72 fighters." The mercenaries exchanged glances, disbelief evident in their eyes. "We expected humans to gather in their settlements, barricade themselves, wait for rescue," Zaroktal continued. "Instead, they came to us. In small groups, pairs, even alone. They knew the terrain, every hill, every hollow, every building, and they used it." The captain approached a wall where an old photograph hung in a frame, a faded image of a group of warriors of his kind. "The first ambush was set by an old man. We entered a small canyon, perfect route to the main settlement. We thought we checked, scanned with sensors, no signs of life." He paused. "The human had been lying in a rock crevice for 20 hours, buried in soil, covered with a thermal blanket. Our sensors didn't detect him." "1 human," the Krogi leader said skeptically. "1 old man with a rifle older than me," Zaroktal nodded. "He opened fire when half our column entered the gorge. First shot took down the squad leader, right through the gap in his helmet visor. Second shot detonated the fuel depot on our transport. Then the rocks around us exploded. The captain closed his eyes, remembering. Primitive explosives, you understand. Fertilizer and fuel, homemade detonators. Engineering mines from their century-old war. Everything that old man could gather in a few days. He brought half the canyon down on our heads. 12 fighters killed, 16 more wounded. And you couldn't get him? One mercenary asked incredulously. Oh, we got him, Zaroktal smiled grimly. Took us 2 hours and 3 more dead. You know what he was doing when we surrounded him? Smiling. Out of ammunition, chest wound bleeding out, but he was smiling and said something in his language. I learned the translation later. You're too slow, boys. Better hurry to the town. Zaroktal returned to the viewport. We didn't understand what he meant then. Thought it was just dying bravado. We continued toward the settlement. His voice grew quieter. A kilometer later, the real hell began. He turned, distant stars reflecting in his eyes. Children, human younglings no older than 8 to 10 cycles. They would dash out from cover, throw homemade grenades and disappear before we could react. Small, fast, knowing every corner. One boy, I still remember his face, ran up to our walker, tossed 3 thermite charges into the air intake and vanished into a drainage pipe. The machine burned in a minute with the crew inside. The Krogi were silent now, listening tensely. We tried to take some children hostage, the captain continued, something like shame in his voice. Thought it would make the adults stop resisting. It didn't work. The children themselves fought back, bit, scratched, screamed at their parents to keep fighting. One girl, maybe 10 years old, pulled the pin on a grenade on the belt of the fighter holding her. Both died. Zaroktal approached the table, poured himself water with a trembling hand. We finally reached the settlement, expected to see a crowd of frightened civilians ready to surrender. Instead, every house was a fortress. In the windows, old rifles, hunting shotguns, even sport weapons. On the roofs, improvised catapults with bottles of fuel. In the basements, tunnels connecting buildings. They had turned the entire town into one large trap. Primitive weapons against combat armor, one Krogi muttered, but without his earlier confidence. Yes, the captain nodded. Primitive, but they aimed for gaps, joints, sensors. They knew the weak points of any armor. Centuries of warfare taught them that. And they were willing to trade lives, 10 of theirs for 1 of ours. They weren't fighting for money or glory. They were defending their home, their children, their families. Zaroktal fell silent again. Lost in memories. The battle for the settlement lasted 18 hours. We had to claw out every meter with combat. An old man with an ancient machine gun mounted in a pharmacy window held an entire street for 3 hours. A woman, a doctor, threw a medical laser scalpel converted into an explosive device at us. Teenagers used agricultural drones to drop homemade bombs. And you retreated, the mercenary leader asked quietly. We took the settlement, Zaroktal answered. But it couldn't be called a victory. Out of 200 fighters, 123 remained. The rest were killed or wounded so severely they could no longer fight. We lost 1/3 of our force fighting elderly, children, and ordinary farmers. Elite corps, best equipment, years of training, against humans who had picked up weapons just days before. He looked at the mercenaries. You know what happened next? When human military ships arrived, a real fleet, our commander surrendered without a fight. He saw what would happen if the regular human army landed on the planet after their civilians had dealt with us like that. Zaroktal returned to his chair and sank into it, suddenly looking very old. You see numbers in the report. Children, elderly, primitive weapons. You don't understand that every human, from younglings to ancient elders, is capable of becoming a fighter when it comes to defending their home. They don't surrender. They don't retreat. They fight like cornered predators because for them it's a matter of their species' survival, their families, their future. He pointed at the door. Go to the human settlement if you want. Find another ship, another captain stupid or greedy enough to take you there. But know this, Those weak civilians with primitive weapons will cost you more than all the loot you hope to take, if you survive at all. The mercenaries slowly rose. The smugness had evaporated from their faces, replaced by uncertainty. "Do you really believe this?" the leader asked. "That they're that dangerous?" Zaroktal raised his left appendage. Where there should have been 3 digits, only 2 remained, the third ending in a stump. "A human girl did this to me, no older than 12 cycles, with a wood-chopping axe." He looked the Krogi straight in the eye. "Yes, I believe, because I was there. I saw how they fight, and I will never again raise a weapon against humans defending their home." Silence hung in the cabin. Then the mercenary leader slowly nodded and headed for the exit. The others followed. At the door, he turned back. "There are other settlements, non-human ones. For such contracts I am available," Zaroktal nodded. "But if you want an old warrior's advice, choose enemies who fight for money or power. Those who fight for home and family are unbeatable. And humans always fight for exactly that." When the door closed behind the mercenaries, the captain looked again at the old photograph on the wall. There, among his fallen comrades, stood several human soldiers, the very ones who came after the surrender. He raised his glass in a silent toast. "To worthy opponents," Zaroktal whispered, "and to the lesson written in blood, never underestimate a creature defending its home." In the endless cosmos beyond the viewport, distant stars flickered. Among them, somewhere, was a small yellow dwarf with a third planet where creatures lived who had taught him this lesson. A lesson he would not forget until the end of his days.